Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're embarking on an absolutely fascinating journey. We are going to trace the path from pure, abstract mathematical thought all the way to massive, tangible architecture. We're diving deep into the design philosophy and the groundbreaking methodology of the legendary Dutch architectural firm, UNStudio. If you've ever wondered how abstract concepts actually become the concrete reality we walk through every day, well, you are definitely in the right place.
Okay, let's dive into this mental roadmap for today. First, the public scientist. Second, diagrams as design tools. Third, the deep planning process. Fourth, mathematical masterpieces in reality. And finally, the future of architecture. And don't worry, this deep dive into architectural philosophy is absolutely going to pay off with some magnificent real-world structures.
All right, part one, the public scientist.
So, back in 1988, Ben Van Berkel and Caroline Boss founded what would eventually become UNStudio. And when they did, they sparked a radical shift in how we even define what an architect is. I mean, historically, architecture relied on this idea of the Baumeister, the traditional master builder. This solitary genius working all alone to create a static, heroic form. Well, UNStudio completely threw that out the window. In our digital age, they championed something they call the public scientist. This is a network expert who coordinates complex political, economic, social, and tech forces into a single physical space. It's a stark contrast to that old lone genius model.
And this brilliantly illustrates that shift. Instead of sitting alone in a room just dictating a single geometric form, the public scientist stands right at the center of a vast, interconnected network. They're essentially the central coordinator for a whole platform of cross-disciplinary experts, ranging from urban developers to infrastructure specialists. It's this highly collaborative, networked practice designed specifically to tackle the insane complexity of modern urban environments.
We can actually see this organizational evolution play out over time. Back in '88, as Van Berkel and Boss, they were super focused on form and infrastructure. Think iconic bridges. Then, by 1998, they evolved into UNStudio. That stands for United Network Studio, by the way. And their focus shifted to generating these really complex, flowing spaces using diagrams. Fast forward to 2018, and they expanded again with UNSense, pivoting towards digital innovation, human-centric design, and health tech.
Moving right along to part two, diagrams as design tools.
So how exactly do they generate these complex, flowing spaces, using something as abstract as diagrams? Well, it all comes back to their core philosophy. They were heavily inspired by the philosopher Gilles Deleuze and his theories on flow and rhizomes, basically interconnected, ever-shifting networks. Because of this, UNStudio completely rejected the idea of building static, single-purpose boxes. Instead, they believe architecture has to be a continuous, flowing, mixed environment. It needs to accommodate multiple timescales, different uses, and just constant, dynamic human interaction.
To actually pull off that continuous flow, they rely heavily on diagrams. But, and this is a crucial distinction, they don't just use diagrams to analyze a site. No, they practice what they call designing inside diagrams. They treat the diagram as this generative, abstract machine. So instead of starting with a standard blueprint, like your typical hallway and doors layout, they literally insert a diagram between themselves and the building. This lets an entirely new organizational logic and these incredibly organic layouts just unfold naturally.
Now, what's really interesting about this next part is section 3, the deep planning process.
This is where they take all that abstract philosophy and turn it into a highly systematic, rigorous methodology they call deep planning. It's essentially a 4-step blueprint for handling massively complex projects, like sprawling urban transit hubs. The steps are 1. A flow scan and motion study, 2. Parametric modeling, 3. Identifying kaleidoscope moments, and 4. Time-based planning.
It all kicks off with step 1, the flow scan and motion study. Way before they even think about designing shapes, the team scans the location to map out the real-world physical movement of people. They're looking at trajectories, directions, how long folks tend to linger in certain spots. They are literally mapping the living pulse of the site to reveal what its true problems and potentials actually are.
Then, in step 2, they take all that raw movement data and feed it into digital tech, like Rhino and Grasshopper. This is parametric modeling. They're turning social, political, and physical data into actionable design parameters. This ensures that the final building isn't just a pretty geometric shape, right? It's a structure that responds directly and dynamically to actual human needs and flows. Step 3 introduces a really fascinating term to demystify things: kaleidoscope moments. Think about it. In any major building, foot traffic is naturally going to cross, turn, or hit a bottleneck. But instead of seeing those as problems to fix, UNStudio defines them as kaleidoscope moments. They are functional obstacles that can actually add massive value to the space.
So, when they pinpoint a kaleidoscope moment where flows intersect, they use that specific bottleneck to organically distribute different functions. It's like intentionally guiding a crowd into retail boutiques, or a cultural hub, or a really vibrant social space. And this inherently weaves right into step 4, time-based planning, ensuring the architecture adapts perfectly to how the space is used at totally different times of the day. Let's move to and see how this builds in section 4, mathematical masterpieces in reality.
Okay. This right here is the ultimate translation key. It connects those pure, mind-bending, non-orientable mathematical shapes to actual living and working environments. For example, the Mobius strip became the Mobius house, creating this continuous 24-hour living and working loop. The trefoil, or double helix, shaped the Mercedes-Benz Museum, laying out parallel paths for history and vehicle collections. And the Klein bottle generated Arnhem's Central Station, seamlessly fusing completely diverse modes of transit.
If you step inside the Mobius house, which was built back in the 90s, traditional functional zoning is just gone. Sleeping, working, and living areas are all woven into one continuous loop. The architects actually describe the experience inside as being like a continuous walk in the countryside. As you move along the path, the materials seamlessly shift from glass to concrete. Even the furniture, like the tables and stairs, literally extends directly out of the building's core structure. It's wild. And this crazy math leads to some massive structural achievements in concrete and steel. Take the Mercedes-Benz Museum. It uses that trefoil geometry, featuring this incredible technical feat known as the twist. These are pre-stressed concrete columns that don't just span massive exhibition halls, they connect the DNA-like double helix floors. On the flip side, Arnhem Central Station uses the Klein bottle geometry to unify buses, trains, and parking into one single continuous urban ecosystem.
Now I gotta drop a massive statistic on you for a quick reality check on the scale of these projects. 20 years. That is exactly how long it took to build the 160,000 square meter Arnhem Central Station. The geometry was so insanely complex that Standard Concrete essentially threw its hands up. It was way too risky and expensive for the Central Transfer Hall. So get this, they actually had to bring in a shipyard from Göttingen, use shipbuilding steel techniques, and weld the massive steel components directly on site. No way, right?
All right, final section, part 5, the future of architecture. So UNStudio is definitely not resting on its laurels. In 2018, Ben van Berkel launched that sister company, UNSense. They describe it as an arch-tech firm. Basically, they're moving way beyond just physical resilience or those standard smart city efficiency models. Their new primary driving forces are completely invisible. We're talking digital health tech, air circulation, natural light, and ultimate user well-being. They view architecture no longer as a fixed, static endpoint, but as a responsive, resilient interface. And we can see this vision already in action at the Brainport Smart District in the Netherlands. It's essentially this massive, data-driven living laboratory. UNSense is actively integrating physical space with digital sensors that are constantly adapting to improve human well-being. The residents there participate in energy sharing systems and have total control over their personal data. The building itself literally responds to the people inside it.
Which leads us to a pretty profound place to wrap up our explainer today. We've gone from abstract diagrams and concrete all the way to digital sensors and data. And it leaves us with this provocative question. Will the buildings of the future care for our health as much as we do? As UNStudio's journey shows us, your own personal data might very soon shape, adapt, and breathe life into the very walls around you. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep observing the spaces around you, and I'll catch you next time.